Today we are working on a 2007 Toyota Prius. We're going to take this battery out and find out where the bad cells are. And you'll notice that I have the 12-volt battery hooked up to a charger. And the reason I have that hooked up to a charger is if the 12-volt battery goes bad, then the skid control will not talk to the ABS. If you let these things sit more than 8 months, there's a possibility that skid control is not going to be talking to the ABS, and your brakes won't work after you let these things sit for a while. That's happened to this car when I bought it off somebody who let it sit too long. I had to replace the ABS and the skid control, which is above the gas pedal, behind the dash. Not very easy to get to. You got to take the whole top of the dash off just to get to the top bolt to remove the skid control. The ABS, the anti-lock braking system, is actually below and behind the inverter. So be warned, if you ever have your 12-volt battery disconnected long enough, you may have other problems when you get done putting everything back together. Yep, on a Gen 2, you got to take off both these side panels. On a Gen 3, surprisingly, you don't have to. On a Gen 1, you got to take the whole back seat out. Almost lost that socket. Okay, that one's missing then.
There's nothing there either.
Okay, then this one right here is. It's a 14. Great guns. Okay, get that seatbelt strap off of there. Push that back. Push the black thing back. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the 12-volt battery. Okay, 12-volt battery is disconnected. I have to tighten that. That's loose. I'm going to take off the ductwork. I already got these pins pulled out. Got to remove all these structural bolts. And there are some on the front that you got to remove. Oh, hey, look, that one's not even there. Must have lost that one last time. Man, somebody got aggressive. Put this thing back on there. Guess they were making up for that one that was missing. Alright, now, if you ever want to replace the rear shock on this car, there's the top of it. But you don't have to remove that. You have to remove this one and these two back here. Screw in from the bottom. Pretty sure. Yeah, these two screw in from the bottom. This one right here you have to remove if you want to replace that strut. Okay, you want to remove this clip, pull up and push out, and it disables basically one of the jumper wires halfway through the battery. Yeehaw. So if you were replacing this back left strut, you would take those, well, those two come from the bottom. They screw into nuts that are welded there. And this one over here, you'd have to remove that from the top, and then obviously it's going to spin on the bottom.
You gotta get it in
Forget there. You. This takes the ductwork off, the bottom part of the ductwork anyway. This is going to be a special bolt, so we're going to put it in a special can. It's going to go in a can by itself with this guy right here because he's special. Don't lose my little thingy. He goes in that can. All right, so we're going to take off these two bolts, and then there's three in the front. 1, 2, 3. Wow, got a big extension on there. these bolts right here, I've had this apart before, so I actually took and I ground with my grinding wheel a slit in them so I can take them out with a flat screwdriver. These are the Forget You bolts. If you don't have this special whatever, it's got a Torx with a little hole in the middle of it. If you don't have that, I think it's a 5-star. Then anyway, I mean, you get to get those off however you want, but I put a slit in the top of them so I can take them out with a flat screwdriver. So now we don't have to have a special tip. Actually, we do. We have a special tip bolt right here. It's called a flathead screwdriver. So see how well that works? That's lovely. So what you do is you take your little grinder, you grind through the top of this, and then Toyota, you avoid your warranty and all this stuff because, all this stuff, it's danger, 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 warning, 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 Will Robinson. And now those are lost. And they're stainless steel. They're not metal. They're metal, they're just not magnetized metal. Like everything else in the world. Unscrew those and put them in a special can. What little ones?
The little ones, they look like that.
No, we're going to take those off next.
Alright, what can we put these in?
What's going to be under this cover is the relays. There are 2 relays. We need to get my air conditioner out. Special can. So here's your 2 relays. Here's your computer. So we're going to take off these now. And at this point, you want to make sure that you have for sure disconnected the battery and for sure taken the safety off of this thing. Doing it blind. Oh yeah, that one has a nut on it. See the nut right there? Like they couldn't self-tap that one. These aren't even tight. Look at that. Some idiot put this back together. I wonder what he looked like. Look, this one's not tight either. That one is. That was while I was holding the whole thing together. There we go. Now you'll notice this thing has 14 pairs, so it has 28 cells. Because this is a Gen 2. A Gen 3 has 14 pair, which is 28 cells. A Gen 1, unfortunately, you can put these cells into a Gen 1, but the Gen 1 needs 10 more cells, so it has 5 more pair. So it has 19 pairs for a total of 38 cells instead of 28. So if you consider buying one of these batteries to replenish one in a Gen 1, they are keyed differently on the sidewalls. So they do not fit. So you have to buy all 38 cells that are keyed the same on the sidewall, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Now you'll notice what this breaker thing does is it actually disconnects these two wires right here, which go right to there. And because it does that, it actually takes and kills like half of the battery. So you only get hit with 110 volts if you mess up, instead of 220. So we're going to pull all these covers off, and you got to take one side of the battery's nickel plates off. Well, we put nickel plates in here, so it made the battery last a lot longer, because you'll notice they're not corroded, whereas the copper ones, my goodness, copper ones. Here's the copper ones. So I bought all nickel plates, and because otherwise I was taking these and soaking them in muriatic acid and then cleaning them off and wire brushing them. And I found out with nickel plate ones, you don't have to do that, because everything in here is nickel. The nuts, I mean the bolts, the nuts, even the battery itself's got nickel in it. Now I left the back seat in. My daughter was just asking me, because I'm going to sit right there and do that side of the battery, because you have to disconnect all these 8mm nuts. So we're going to do this side first, because that side over there has the wiring harness on it that actually senses the sensor wires that tell how many volts are in each pair. So you'll notice on that side they're all hooked together because of this side, and there are sensor wires. There's a sensor wire cable that goes to the computer, and what that does is it tells the computer these wires right here go to every other one. Well, it starts here and then it goes to every other one, and that tells the computer. And then because of where that's jumpered and opened over there, it actually switches here in the middle. So you'll see two of them that are real close together. Sensor wires. I'm trying to find them. There they are right there. You'll notice there's two sensor wires. There's one on this one, and there's one on that one, because they're measuring the voltage the opposite direction. Alright, so these get torqued to 48 inch-pounds, but we're taking all these off so we can measure voltages. Otherwise we can't measure individual cells voltage. Big guns. Maybe they're stainless steel. I'm sorry, I probably bought stainless steel ones, and that's why they didn't rust. How is that a strange one? In the world? Garbage. Alright, now I have my voltmeter set on DC power, and I'm going to measure the voltage on each one of these cells. This one says it's 7.44, so I'm going to write 7.44 on the cell. If you measure between these two, you'll get twice that, 13.63, and it's negative because this is a positive, red, this is negative, black. So now I got 13.64 on those, which means this is positive. And if I measure over here, I got 7.42. So I'm going to write 7.42 on this one. Isn't that interesting? 7.42. Now I've had these batteries sitting in this car for quite a while. My daughter can tell you that. But what we're going to end up finding is there's going to be one that is horribly, oh, look at that, there it is, and it's clear over here by the computer. If it was over here, we literally wouldn't have to remove all these cells. We're going to have to loosen all the screws on the bottom. We have to take these two things off on the top and bottom, unscrew them, move them over, and then replace the cell that's bad. So I think we just found the first bad one. The reason I let the car sit for that long is because that way you can tell which cells are going bad. So, okay, 6.21, yeah, that one's got to be replaced. Anything below 7 volts is usually, this one is just 6.21. So we're going to go all the way down these, and that's the process. .19, and we had one bank that was low, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably it. 7.4, 7.43, 7.33, that one's getting ready to go bad. 7.40, can't find the nut. 6.19, okay, that one's, look, somebody's already got a red mark on it. Isn't that interesting? Like they were watching it. So what happens is these ones that are lower than 7 volts, they actually start getting hot. And when they get hot, they heat up the ones beside it. And then there are these heat sensors in here. There's wires here underneath. So this one has the heat sensors under it. All right, so we've measured the voltage on these, and you can see there's a 5 volter, there's 2 5 volters right there. On this one, I wrote it on the other side, only because that was already taken. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cells that we're going to need. All right, I got my voltmeter on here. I'm going to make sure I don't have any voltage here. There's no voltage here, so I can disconnect these. Sometimes you'll get backfeed through the capacitors up in the inverter, up in the engine. Fortunately, we don't have that here. Alright, now we can disconnect the battery and, well, flip the battery upside down and the right side up and every way we need to get to the screws on the bottom. Okay, we just removed all these nuts, so we're going to remove the bus bars from this side, because now we have to take this battery, loosen these bolts here and those 2 down there, and we have to slide everything out. But in order to do that, we got to remove the nuts on the bottom, well, the bolts on the bottom. Here's the nuts I'm talking about. Now you want to be careful when you flip this over, you don't short any of this out when you have these things connected, because if you do, these will all make all kinds of noise. So we want to put a 2x4 or something down over here so we can lay this on it.
Okay.
Here's all the bolts that we got to remove. And we got to remove all the way back over to here because of our bad 6 volt ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. All right, so we're going to do that. It's a 7mm.
You asked for too much.
Alright, so these are 7s. For some reason they're 8s on Gen 1s. Here come all the cells since we removed the bottom ones, the bottom bolts. All these cells are going to want to try to expand a little bit. So that's what these 4 bolts do, is they sandwich all these together so you can get your screws lined up in the bottom. And this is one of the annoying things, is that right there, because it's pressed against that, and you got to pull this up and push it down and gyrate it and get it in there when you're putting it back together. Oh, look, we got a 10mm bolt over here. $10mm nut. Because that's so special. You'll notice how much trouble this is giving you. That's got to be put back in. You'll notice that these are, every other one has a vent hole. So every other one on this one has a vent hole, because the battery's cells are turned the opposite direction, plus minus, plus minus. Actually, it starts out over here. I put a plus mark right there because you start with plus on this side. So I put a plus right there because I knew this one had to be a plus. So it's plus minus, and that's why these are the way they are. Vent, no vent, vent, no vent. You'll notice that these are keyed with 2 dots and a square. 2 dots and a square. So you have to have 2 dots and a square on the next cells that you put in here. So we're going to make sure that we find one. Obviously this is a bad one. These 2 are bad ones. And now that we have the bolts removed on the bottom, we can actually pull these out the side, mind the vent. So we've got 6 here. We've got 2 6s here. You'll notice that none of those had the... Okay, so what is this hose? There's a wire down here holding it. Look at that. They got that holding that temperature sensor thing in there. Let's make sure we got the 7 bad ones. 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. We're going to make sure in our stash that we have the ones with the right keys on the side of them. Otherwise they won't fit in with this set. There's my little bat friend. He's still up there eating mosquitoes. Well, at night. Okay, these are Gen 1 cells because they have 3 circles and 3 dots. So you'll notice that that wouldn't press against. That wouldn't key up with that little square that they've got on the Gen 2 cells. So you got to make sure of that. Now they have redone these so that they have metal sides on them. See, that one has metal sides, but it's 3 circles and 3 dots. So these are actually keyed for this, even though these are the original Gen 1s. And these are the replacement Gen 1s that they have. Yep. But we're looking for Gen 2 cells. And that's going to be 2 circles and 1 square. And that's what we have right here. So now we're going to measure the voltages on these that I have. Make sure we have something similar to 7.4. Seven 7.25, 7.31, 7.31. So remember, these have been sitting here for a couple of years, and if they're at 7.3, that's not horrible. They're not 6, so they don't have an internal component leak. Here's another box of 7.43. Ooh, that's a nice one. If that one's been sitting there that long. $7.46. $7.2, $7.3, 7.38, 7.39, 7.43. Almost a 7.4. 7.45. 7.42. 7.44. 4 down, 3 to go. Are you getting the voltage over here too?
For most of them, yeah. Your arm kind of gets in the way sometimes.
Fat arms in the way. 7.43, that's a nice one. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a 7.42. Okay, we got 7 good ones. So you notice these sensor wires plug into the bottom of these, well, they clip on the bottom of these cells. So that one has something holding it in. It just clicks on there. But normally what you want to do is you want to take all of these voltages and you want to put the highest batteries with the lowest batteries, so that, like, there's a 751, so that one needs to be with one of the lowest cells just to balance it out. See, I got 725s on there. It's a 741. I'm guessing they put that down there just to hold that sensor in there. No, it was there when we got this thing. Okay, now I integrated the ones that we just pulled out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There it is, 7. Why are those two right next to you? They're not. There's a skip. Okay, that's cool. All right, and then I put the 7.51 with the 7.25. Notice, started out with positive here on the sensor wire side, and you can tell that you're correct by the vent tube. So vent tube, vent tube, vent tube, broken vent tube, vent tube, vent, 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 vent is every other one. So when you put on your vent tube things, you'll have it vented out the side, and you can tell that right away you've got the batteries oriented correctly. Now you want to try to make sure that you are centered over these holes on the bottom. So you want to make sure that the shoulder, the lip on there, is the same on both sides. I put this nut back on here so I didn't have to put it in a can. But this is the fun part right here. Taking this and smashing everything over and getting this settled down in there. Because look, you got these two little tabs right here on both sides. It's easier just to grind those off, but we can lift this whole thing up and get that on the bottom of there.
Salmon.
I'm not lined up on the bottom channels. Bottom channels need to be moved over a little bit. And down and around, and basically these on the bottom move back and forth and up and down too, so you got to get them behind the screw. There it went. And now is where you tighten this down and it pulls that in. I'm gonna lose my socket. Now I'm just getting these snug right now because I want to tighten them evenly. But you want to go back through your batteries and make sure that you got the casings all lined up, so your corners should be straight all the way down. If you have one that's off, it's going to crush the cell and weaken it. You want to make sure the keys are in the keyholes. Dielectric grease. Now, when I get this on here right, this will pull back over that shoulder. But we had to lift up these batteries on the end and slide those 4 tabs underneath the bottom of the cells on this end. So now this should click in place. There it goes. See it go? It went right.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty then. Come on, I'm putting this nut back on.
Oh.
You going?
Yeah, it's already going. Never stop.
I thought you did stop. Where's my 10 with the extension? reason I use that board is because it holds the batteries where they need to be so I can get the screws in on the bottom. Yep, they're lined up good. So we're going to do this on top and bottom. Okay, so Gen 2s and Gen 3s only have a bolt on one end of each battery, on each cell I mean. So you can tell right here whether you've got them in correctly. Now at Gen 1 cells, they have screw holes on both sides of the cell. And on Gen 2 they don't. So apparently on a Gen 1 you could probably skip every other one when you're putting it all back together. We're going to lay this down now and bolt it back in the car, see if it works. Now we got to refasten all the sensor wires and all the bus bar connectors, which again we replaced with nickel, and I'm very pleased with what we got here. Okay, I'm going to fasten this side up first with all the 8mm. And remember, these nuts get torqued to 48 inch-pounds. Stupid thing keeps coming out. There we go. All right, I'm going to put all these nuts back on, torque them to 48 inch-pounds with my little tiny Harbor Freight 1/4 inch torque wrench. Now, if you put this in here correctly, your dead ends are going to go over here, and then the ones with the holes in it are going to go over here, and that goes into the vent tube. So the longer one goes over here because it's got to grab more all the way up to that end right there. And the short one starts one cell off the computer. No, that's just next to oh, yeah, it's just next to this clamp right here.
We have one that didn't have a...
Well, that one's not it. It's right here somewhere. There it is. But just make sure these are up, holding that wire channeled out there. And again, they don't even have this on the Gen 3s. The Gen 3s don't even have... Gen 3s don't have these vent tubes on them. I think they do have the things, but you don't use them for anything. Okay, you want to make sure you do not cross thread these. If you cross thread these, that means you got to replace the cell again, because a cross threaded cell isn't going to hold the nut at 48 inch-pounds. That was in there alright. Alright, so when the wrench pops, you know you're at 48 if you have this turned to 48. So we're going to make sure we do all these to 48 because we do not want to strip the nuts off or break them and have to replace the cells again. Now if you were going to wire brush any of these, or you were tempted to, once you've connected the bus bars on the other side, you can't do it because you would touch this one to this one and it would short out. So, or you know, whatever's junctioned on that side, if you were to wire brush these, you'd be fine. But if you wire brush these, they would short out because the other side's connected. So don't be tempted to wire brush these after you put them in. Wire brush them before if you're going to wire brush them. And I'm going to clean that one. I'm going to wire brush that one for sure. Alrighty then. Didn't quite. There it went. You hit the corner. There you go. Okay, 48 inch-pounds. 48, 48, 48 inch pounds. Okay, those 5 go to the battery bracket mount down, fasten down thingy. Okay, so there's your 2 there's your 2 nuts. So let's tighten all those since they all lined up. We got to put the vent in. That's what holds the support framing on right there. So you have to line that hole up because it doesn't want to line up normally, especially when it's been wrenched off of there. So that one lines up, so I'm going to put this one in first. We got to plug this wire in right here, so got to get this on. And I didn't plug in the wire. You remember the 10 millimeter? 10 millimeter goes there. And push pin goes there. There we go. It's all lined up. Alright, so you can't put this on until after you put the case on. So let that be a lesson to me. So once you put the case on, then you can put this clip in. Push that down and it locks it in. Alright, so we got the smart key because it's got this silver on it. And you press your foot on the brake, press the start button. Notice the first time it did not do ready. And the reason why it didn't do ready is because it was the first time you pressed it after the battery was disconnected. So be ready for that. You'll wonder why in the world is this acting funny. Now, in order to charge the battery, the hybrid battery that we just put in, the motor just started for the first time in, wow, 6 months. All right, now you hold your foot on the brake, you put your car in drive, and you push your foot on the gas, and it should charge. I had the door open. Should charge the battery to an acceptable level. But if you don't have your foot on the brake and have it in drive, then your battery won't charge. It won't do this in park. You got to have it in drive. So right now, technically, I guess I could be driving this. Let's just do that. I'm going to turn it off. And I'm going to start it again. All right, I just drove it, and now I'm going to put all the bracing back in. These are fun to line up sometimes. This one goes on that side. This one comes over here. So you want to push that in and over and like that. Now, I wouldn't tighten any of these all the way until you get them all lined up, because if you don't get them lined up, you got to be shaking this piece of metal all over the place just to make sure everything lines up. So you got to get this nut here lined up like that, and then put the screw in. There we go. Okay, so that one's stripped out. That's why I didn't have one in there to begin with. Somebody else stripped that one out. Needed seven stinking batteries, 7 cells. Oh yeah, the Gen 2s are even better than this. You don't have to take these side things off on the Gen 2, on Gen 3. I mean, Gen 3, you don't have to take that one off. You got to take this one off just to get to the fan assembly on this side of the Gen 3s. But yeah, it's a lot easier to do this than a Gen 1. Gen 1, you got to take the back seat out all the way. Yeah, got to put these nuts on first. And I'll put that bolt in. But this right here, these are all the frame. Whatever you do, and whether you are tempted or not, do not ever put a bolt in that hole. I don't know what tempted me to one time, but I did it, and it ran right into one of the solenoids, one of the switches. And yeah, I had to buy another one of those little switches. And then I got to tighten those nuts. No, I didn't tighten this one earlier. I just put it in, and the other little plastic pieces in the same can that was in. Okay, so there is one that goes right there. And let's see, there's one that goes right here too. Hello. It won't start. Ooh, I'm not going to put that long one in there. That long one would end up hitting the wires down in there. Don't want to do that. So the long one I put up here because there's nothing behind it to hit. So got to tighten all those up. So you got to get a seat belt in this groove. Don't forget to plug in your light. Now this one goes to the other side. So when you put this in, this goes in that hole right there. This hook goes in that. I want the seat belt on the outside of it. And this you want to line up and the grooves right there. So we're gonna hold this up like this, slide it down in there, and then that bolt right there, it's easier to do if you take the seat off. I'll probably take the seat off now. Got to put the other side in. And we don't want to forget stuff. This has to go on that. And then this goes in there. We'll do that first. This didn't go in here, that's why. this has got to come up here and gets plugged into that once we get done. But it was behind there, it was holding it up. Make sure you're wrapped on the back. Now we'll plug this in there. And we can shove some plastic retainer things in there. Remember, we said we were going to tighten that positive. When we do this, we do not want to touch the frame with any of this because this is 12 volts positive. All right, that's tight. Yeah, before it was wiggling, so it's not wiggling now. Let's see if this one's wiggling. Nope, that one's tight. And you'll notice it goes to ground. Sometimes I'll take these off and clean that terminal and clean the metal that it fastens to, because that's the only ground connection in the whole car to the battery. Okay, time to put the seatbelt on in its slot. We'll do it from this side this time. Again, that slot goes into that hole right there. And this little thing right here splits that hole right there. And also, this piece of material goes in right in there. So make sure all that's lined up. And you got this thing at the top that goes up here. Now you notice this is vented because it's the fan side. Make sure this whole thing comes out in the right place. Oop, didn't look like it wanted to, but it is now. Beautiful. And then we'll tighten those two screws here, one there and one on the other side. But now the seat belt, you want the seat belt to come underneath this part because it goes in front of the seat. This goes in before the bottom piece because this goes underneath it. This goes in next. Over here, gotta line up. Gotta line up that bolt basically. There it is. So this nut right here gets shoved on the thing. And this right here, these go over here. And we've got this going in. Line it up on those holes. There are some push pins that go in here if they're still connected. That one's going to go right there. That one's missing. So we're just going to line it up, click it in there. don't know if you guys remember this or not, but this goes right there in that hole. There's one on the other side. Goes in that hole once you line it up with the metal piece. So it's right there. There it goes. And this is Velcro, fastens to the back of the seat once the seat's in. Of course, the Velcro's hanging on to everything for dear life. At this point, we can put the seats in. Now, if you flipped this seat over like I did, then you don't have to mess with the seatbelt on the inside. The inside seatbelt should be lined up as long as you didn't flip it off. Oh, and that's a common problem. All right, so the seat belt should still be fastened, should be straight, as a matter of fact, and it is. That's beautiful. Now we're going to flip these up. Well, we just need the one flipped up. And that's going to go in that hole right there, like that. There we go. Key lined up. Those two go in the back. Another can empty. The only thing I got left is 2 long bolts, 2 short bolts. They go to the bottom of the vent cover and the other side cover down by the seat. This one doesn't have the seatbelt thingy. Put the seatbelt out here. Bring this up. Slide the seat under it. No. Don't know where my magnet is. Okay, these long ones only go in the front. I think I may have lost my magnet on this job. I have to look back through the video. Find out where my magnet last went. Last used it on picking up the nuts out of the can. Here we go again with seatbelts. Yeah, my magnet's in there somewhere.